Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are jumping right into the wild world of crypto regulation in the US. And believe me, until recently, chaotic was a bit of an understatement.
Okay, let's just dive right in. Think about this. Back in 2024, if you were in crypto in America, the rules were, well, a total mess. A real tangled web. Fast forward just 2 years to 2026, and suddenly there's a clear playbook. So, what happened? How did that massive shift occur? We're going to unpack exactly how the US government managed to bring some serious order to the digital Wild West.
All right, here's how we're going to break it all down. First, we'll get on the same page with the big picture of crypto. Then, we'll take a trip back to that era of uncertainty. From there, we'll see how Congress stepped in and created a playbook, what those new rules actually look like in action. And finally, we'll land in 2026, where we've gone from total chaos to real clarity.
Okay, first things first, let's talk crypto, the big picture. Before we dive into all the legal nitty-gritty, we've got to make sure we've got that foundational layer right.
So, what even is a blockchain? At its core, it's pretty simple. Imagine a chain of digital blocks. Each block is just a bunch of records, right? Like a list of who paid whom. But here's the magic. Each new block is cryptographically linked to the last one. This creates this secure, shared history that's incredibly difficult to tamper with. It's like a public record book that everyone shares and trusts.
Okay, now let's talk about the two giants, Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's super important to get this distinction. Think of Bitcoin as digital gold, or just straight up digital money. Its whole purpose was to be a peer-to-peer payment system. Ethereum, on the other hand, its ambition was way bigger. It's more like a programmable world computer. It's a platform where you can build and run all sorts of applications using something called smart contracts. Basically, these are just bits of code that automatically run when certain things happen. It's a totally different ballgame.
And this really gets to the heart of the problem for regulators, right? You've got this massive promise on one side, huge potential returns, super fast, global transactions with no middleman. But then you have the peril on the other side, insane volatility, assets with no real backing. And because there were no rules, it was a playground for fraud and scams. This is that classic double-edged sword that Washington was trying to figure out how to handle.
All right, so let's rewind the clock a bit. Let's go back to that time before 2025 and really dig into just how confusing things were. Welcome to the era of uncertainty, the regulatory Wild West.
You know, our source material puts it perfectly. It says that before we had clear laws, the government moved from episodic litigation and speeches. What that really means is that the only tools regulators had were lawsuits and making public statements. Imagine trying to build a business in that environment. It was basically regulation by fear.
And the whole point of this was to narrow the space for existential labeling fights. And this is so key. Companies and the government were just stuck in these massive, expensive legal battles over the most basic question. What is this thing? The entire industry was just trying to build on quicksand.
I mean, just think about how impossible this was. If you were building something, you had no clue who was in charge. Was your token a security, like a stock? Then you'd have to answer to the SEC. Or was it a commodity, like oil or gold? Then it's the CFTC. And the rules are completely different. And what about stablecoins? Can banks even touch this stuff? How do you protect customer money? None of these fundamental questions had answers. It was a complete mess that not only choked innovation, but left everyday users totally exposed.
Okay, so this chaos couldn't last forever. Things hit a boiling point, and in 2025, Congress finally stepped in. They acted, and they acted decisively, creating two huge laws that essentially became the new playbook for the entire industry.
So first up, they had to tackle stablecoins. They did this with something called the Genius Act. And honestly, this was a game changer. It did a few really smart things. It picked one main federal regulator, so no more confusion. It forced stablecoin issuers to back their coins with real, high-quality assets. You couldn't just say you had the money. You had to prove it with monthly reports signed off by the CEO. And it guaranteed you could get your dollars back, no questions asked. Plus, and this is huge, it forced regulators to give you a yes or no on your application in 120 days. No more endless waiting. Just like that, stablecoins went from being this sketchy, high-risk thing to a properly regulated piece of the financial puzzle.
All right, next up was the big one, clarifying the markets themselves. This was the Clarity Act. This law drew a super clear line in the sand. It said, okay, when you're raising money, that's an investment contract. But once the network is up and running and decentralized, the token can be treated as a digital commodity. It created a pathway for projects to mature.
It also brought in serious consumer protections, making it illegal for exchanges to gamble with customer funds. It set up a clear sign-up process for exchanges, and get this, it literally forced the SEC and the CFTC to sit in a room together and write the rules jointly. The turf war was finally over.
Okay, so brand new laws are on the books. Great. But what did that actually mean for people on the ground? Let's take a look at the new rules in action and see how this playbook completely reshaped the industry.
And man, when things started moving, they moved fast. You can see on this timeline 2024 and 2025 were just jam-packed. It really kicked off with that final ruling in the SEC versus Ripple case. Then, the White House issues an executive order officially saying we're done with regulation by prosecution. Then, a court ruling leads to OFAC taking Tornado Cash off the sanctions list. The Department of Justice makes it official policy. And to top it all off, the Federal Reserve gets rid of its special crypto program and just starts folding it into normal bank supervision. You see the pattern? It was everyone, the courts, the White House, the agencies, all rowing in the exact same direction, towards clarity.
And the courts played a huge role in this, setting up some really important guardrails. The Ripple case was a big one. It basically said, hey, not all token sales are the same. How you sell it matters. Then you had the Coinbase case, which was paused so a higher court could weigh in, a clear signal that the judges themselves wanted clear rules from the top. And the Terraform Labs case, that was a massive win for transparency. The jury found them liable for lying about their reserves, which sent a powerful message. If you say you have the money, you better actually have it. All of this created a solid foundation of case law that companies could finally use to plan for the future.
Okay, let's pull all of these threads together. Let's talk about the journey from chaos to clarity and what the new baseline looked like in 2026.
There's a line from our source material that just says it all perfectly. The way it is administered has shifted from improvisation to playbook. I mean, that's it right there. The days of making it up as you go, of regulating by surprise lawsuits, they were over.
So here's the bottom line. Here's the new reality for 2026. Yes, the technology is still complicated, no doubt, but the actual rules of the game for builders, for investors, for big institutions, they are now crystal clear. The US finally has a federal framework that makes sense. You know what's expected of you, how to handle customer money, and what the consequences are. It's predictable.
And that's where we land. With a clear playbook finally in hand, the big question for 2026 and beyond isn't if crypto innovation will happen in the US anymore. The question is now, how fast? With the guardrails in place, what comes next for this newly legitimized digital world?